What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Lost and Found Dating Channel back at it again, here with you all with yet another dating topic, because that's what we talk about here on the Lost and Found Dating Channel. We talk about dating, we talk about life, and we talk about dating life. You feel me? So if this is your first time tuning into the channel, welcome. Thank you for joining our family. We hope that you stay and learn some good information. Make sure that you check us out on Twitter and on Instagram. Follow us. Stay in tune on our other platforms where we post videos, we post pictures, some behind the scenes footage from our filming. Thank you all for tuning into the channel. Without further ado, let's dive in. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we got a sweet, tasty, delicious topic this week. This week, we are going to be talking about how to overcome some of the doubts, some of the fears, some of the challenges associated with leaving an unhealthy relationship. When I say unhealthy relationship, that could be a dating relationship, it could be a relationship that you have with a friend, or it can be a relationship that you have with a family member. We're going to talk about how to overcome some of those doubts, some of those fears. When you know that you've gotten to a point where it's time for you to leave, there may be some last minute, some last second kind of hesitation kind of pulling you back in. So I'm going to talk about what I find to be some of the challenges and some of the trouble that myself and other individuals may have when it comes to leaving those unhealthy relationships and how to overcome them. So let's dive in. So I'm going to share a little bit about my own experience, my own life, and my hope is that this will help some of you all out there. Some time ago in the past, there's a point where I was in an unhealthy dating relationship, and it had gotten to a point where there was enough kind of psychological, emotional mistreatment, enough kind of pain being dealt my way, where I knew that it had gotten to the point where I was going to leave the relationship. But one of the things that was kind of keeping me in and preventing me from pulling away was the idea that if I did leave, the woman at that time was not going to agree with my decision, and kind of in the act of separating, I was going to be seen as the bad guy, right? It was this kind of thing where I knew that I wanted to leave. I knew that I had enough justification at that point, but I had this fear and this hesitation of, I don't want to be the bad guy. I don't want to take the blame for it. I don't want to feel like it's my fault for ending the relationship. And if I do end the relationship, I know that there's no chance that this person is going to accept responsibility. I know that it's all going to kind of come down on me and the people whom she interacts with, or maybe recounts how things went down. It's all gonna, be, it was my decision, and I was the one being hurtful towards her, and there wouldn't really be any acceptance of responsibility on her end. And at the time, in my naive fairy tale world, there was this idea where it would just be a clean split, right? I would end the relationship and I would say, hey, you know what? I think it's best that we go our separate ways. And somehow she was just going to be understanding, and she was going to say, you know what? After thinking about it, I have been mistreating you. I have been taking you for granted. I haven't been a fair partner towards you, so it is my fault. And I want to apologize for those things. And even though you're breaking up with me, I wish you the best of luck. in my, like I said, naive fantasy fairy tale world, that was the kind of split that I had wanted, right? I pictured this scenario where they would understand and they would take responsibility for their actions and how maybe they contributed to my decision, and they would just wish me the best of luck, and it would be a even peaceful split. Those of us who have been in unhealthy relationships know that that's just not how these kinds of things work, right? Sometimes just by virtue of being abusive towards you psychologically or emotionally, just by virtue of their treatment of you, they've already accepted their own behavior, and they've kind of already accepted, you know, you as being the target of that behavior, and they don't think that anything's wrong with it, right? Just by nature of them having continuously treated you that way, they don't see it as problematic, right? They don't see any conflict there. And if they did, you know, chances are they wouldn't be treating you that way in the first place. So giving you that example, right? Going along with this sort of trail of unhealthy belief systems that often keep you, you know, sort of chained into that relationship despite knowing that you should end it, I've kind of put together a list of 3 things that I think if you are not assertive enough, 3 things that I think if you have trouble setting boundaries, 3 things that I think if you have trouble putting yourself first, if you have trouble accepting reality and seeing situations as they are as opposed to how you want them to be, if you struggle with doing those things, there's, in my opinion, 3, and we'll just talk about 3, there could be other ones, but there's really 3 things that I think, 3 belief systems that I think tend to keep people in these unhealthy relationships, despite the person consciously knowing, I shouldn't be in this relationship, right? I shouldn't be in this friendship. I shouldn't continue to maintain contact with this family member, right? Despite knowing those things, I think there's 3 belief systems that keep us kind of bound with those individuals. So I'm going to go through those 3 and talk about them in a little bit more detail. So number 1 is thinking that you need the other person's permission to end the relationship, right? To end things. Sometimes we think that we need the other person's sort of blessing or permission or giving us the thumbs up and giving us the okay when it comes to ending the relationship, right? If you've ever been in a situation where you're prepared to end the relationship and you tell the person, hey, you know, I'm ending things, you know, we're done, and they go, you know, no, you're not. You know, we share a home together, we share an apartment together, you're not going anywhere, right? Or, you know, you're not leaving this relationship, you're not leaving this friendship, you know, I drive you to and from work every day. You know, where that's not, I'm not allowing you to leave the relationship, or whatever it is that the person kind of holds over your head and makes you think that you need their permission in order to leave the relationship, right? Sometimes that can be something that kind of traps us, and we think that it can't just be our own decision, right? It can't just be our own free will to leave and say, this makes me unhappy. I don't like the way this relationship makes me feel. That in and of itself is justification to leave, to end things, to end that relationship. Sometimes we think that there needs to be some sort of discussion, right? Or there needs to be some sort of closure where we get the other person to agree with us, or I should say to give us permission, right? Like the example that I gave, I felt like I was held back by, you know, thinking that she just wasn't going to be okay with that decision, right? That she wasn't really going to agree with it or wasn't going to understand, right? So thinking that you need the other person's permission to leave the relationship can be a sticking point. It can hold you back. Number 2 is thinking that you need the other person to understand your decision, right? So in the first scenario, I talked about thinking that you need their permission. This is more along the lines of trying to make sure that they comprehend, that they can sort of wrap their head around it, that they can understand your decision and your justification for wanting to leave the relationship, right? If you have this neurotic need to explain and to justify and for things to make sense and to sort of build this logical brick house by which the person goes, oh, okay, now I understand why you feel like you've been abused. Now I understand why you feel like you've been mistreated. Yes, you may now leave the relationship, right? If you feel this need to explain and to make sure that the other person understands and comprehends, that is going to keep you trapped in that relationship, right? And how, right? You may be asking, how does that work, right? All the person has to do is to kind of play aloof, right? To kind of play dumb to your rationale or your explanation, right? Like I said, you could be building this logical house of giving them examples. On this date you said this, on this date you did this, and you're giving them examples and instances and circumstances by which they were abusive towards you and they weren't treating you like a good friend, family member, partner, whatever the case may be. You're trying to give them all these examples. All that they have to really do is just pretend that they don't understand. Well, I'm confused. What do you mean? Well, you screamed at me, right? And then you got physical with me, and that is why I don't want to be in this relationship. Well, I don't understand. I mean, yeah, I screamed at you, but we scream at each other. People are passionate when they're talking. I don't understand why that needs to be, something that you need to end the relationship about, right? All the person has to do is just push back and give you the impression that they don't understand and that it doesn't make sense to them. And that sort of keeps you feeling like the burden or the responsibility of proving that that you have the right to leave. That responsibility is now on your shoulders, and you feel like you need to prove and justify and make sure that they understand, right? So I'm sure you can see from that example, if you feel this need, like I said, to explain and to help things make sense for them, all that they have to do is just disconnect from your sort of logical foundation that you've built, and it can drive you into frustration, into extreme rage, because you feel like you're justified, you feel like you have these valid reasons, and they're just pretending to not really understand or to not comprehend things. All right, so we talked about number one, feeling like you need the other person's permission. Number two, feeling like you need the other person to kind of understand and to be able to make sense and rationalize with your decision. Number three is feeling like you need the person to agree with your decision. And I know these things somewhat go hand in hand. The reason why I kind of pinpoint agreeing with your decision and want to section off that one, to me, in my opinion, I think that can be one of the most destructive and kind of debilitating ones that hold people back, is because it deals with compassion and expecting the other person to have compassion and to be able to empathize with you and to be able to kind of share the same emotional space that you share, right? It's very seldom that when someone has been mistreating you and is abusive towards you and you're in this unhealthy relationship, it's very seldom that they are going to just agree with your sort of accusations and your claims about how they have been treating you, right? And allow me to give an example in a scenario. Let's suppose that you are a detective, right? And you've been following this big time criminal kingpin who's involved in drugs and crime and violence and all these different things, right? And let's say you've got all the evidence lined up, you've got pictures, you've got witnesses, you've got phone recordings of phone conversations, you've got all this evidence, you have everything that you need in order to get the warrant for the person's arrest, right? You have everything that you need, but the one thing that prevents you from taking action, right? The one reason why you hesitate is because you rationalize, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get the person to confess, right? Each and every day, more crime is being committed, right? More lives are being taken, more people are being put in harm, more innocent people are possibly in these bad situations. And you don't want to take action despite having all of this evidence because you don't think that you're going to get a confession, right, from the criminal whom you know is doing all of these things, right? Imagine how silly that is to have all that evidence, to have all the reasoning and the justification that you need, everything to incriminate the person, but the reason why you don't take action is because you think that once you bring them into custody and you interrogate them, you know that they're gonna sit there and they're gonna, I didn't do it, I would never do such a thing, and they're gonna deny, right? Of course they're gonna deny, the accusations, right? Because they don't want to take responsibility for it. But that doesn't mean that that should hold you back from taking action when you know that you have a series of like I said, evidence against them. And if you feel like that's the sort of psychological hurdle that you're trying to overcome is feeling like, well, I know that I should leave, but I have this fixation with trying to get them to accept blame and trying to get them to agree with me. Try to look at it from a standpoint of just constancy in the person's behavior, right? If you haven't been getting empathy and compassion and the other person sort of being willing to reason and compromise, if you haven't been getting those through the duration of the relationship, don't now then expect those things as the relationship is coming to an end, as you want to leave the relationship, right? Sometimes what happens is we see the person for whom they are, and we see how they've been treating us, and we see the abuse and the mistreatment. But now when it's time to end things, we for whatever reason expect that they're gonna turn a new leaf, and we're gonna see this brand new person once we decide that we want to end the relationship. That's not always going to be the case. Sometimes they're the same lack of compassion and the same lack of sympathy and the same denial and refusal to accept responsibility is the same behavior that you're going to see once you pull away, right? Once you try to end that relationship. And that the person agreeing with you or the person having compassion for you is never a prerequisite of leaving that relationship, right? It doesn't, yes, a relationship is two people, working in synchrony and it's a dyad, it's a team, it's communication. But when we're talking about in the context of abuse, right, when we're talking about an unhealthy relationship where you are the target and the recipient of that abuse, of that mistreatment, don't have this mindset where you have to play by those same rules, right? Of, this is a relationship and we should discuss things. Yes, with certain people, you can have a discussion and you can say, hey, this is how I'm feeling. Certain times, the opportunity for that discussion or that understanding just isn't going to be there, but you don't let that hold you back from removing yourself from an unhealthy situation. So in closing, ladies and gentlemen, understand that you as a individual who has the freedom to do as they choose with their time and their energy and can select whom they choose to share those things with, you don't need someone else's permission, you don't need someone else's approval, you don't need someone else's support. You don't need someone else's apology or acknowledgement for you wanting to remove yourself from an unhealthy situation, right? If you are psychologically bound and committed to getting and achieving those things, sometimes that very commitment and that very fixation will keep you in the unhealthy relationship that you are trying to remove yourself from. So, thanks for watching this video. Hope that I was able to share some perspective, some experience, some light on these kinds of situations. Thank you again for watching. Be sure to check us out on Instagram, on Twitter. And as always, make sure you click the subscribe button. That way you'll be the very first to know when we come out with new content each and every week. Feel free to click that like button, leave a comment down below, share your thoughts, share your feedback. And as always, signing out, signing off, Lost and Found Dating Channel. Wipe me down. And I will catch you all next time. Peace.